Welcome to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few, US PI's weekly podcast that empowers parents to reclaim their children's education from government bureaucrats and social engineers. In each episode, Sherry delivers the latest news from the front lines of the fight for the minds of the next generation, equipping you with the tools and resources needed to join the cause.
Hi everyone, welcome to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. I'm your host, Sherry Few, and I have another great show for you today. Joining me again is Adam Mahdavi, a brave and outspoken teacher and education advocate who was inspired by the work of the late Charlie Kirk, whose legacy we will discuss today. Before we dive in, please take a moment to give us a 5-star rating, share the episode with a friend, and don't forget to visit uspie.org to join the movement.
Today's episode is brought to you by U.S. parents involved in education. U.S. PI's mission is to empower parents and local communities to break free from federal and national influences, thereby reclaiming parental authority over their children's education. For more insights from U.S. parents involved in education, connect with us at US PI on X and Facebook. To join the movement, visit uspie.org.
Welcome back to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. I'm your host, Sherry Few. Back with me today is Adam Mahdavi, a young teacher at South Carolina Preparatory Academy and an outspoken education advocate. Adam earned his degree from the University of South Carolina's School of Education. But after calling out ideological bias in the curriculum and exposing CRT-inspired content in K-12 schools, he faced threats from the university. I wanted to have Adam back on the show to discuss how Charlie Kirk's legacy inspired him to defend our nation's freedoms. Adam Mahdavi, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Ms. Few, for having me back on. It's good to be here. I'm excited to talk about how Charlie Kirk inspired me at the University of South Carolina and afterwards, and activating and being the catalyst for my activism against critical race theory.
Before we dive into our conversation, I'd like to play a short clip from TPUSA that highlights some of Charlie Kirk's life and the work that inspired so many.
We're active in about 15 campuses, and we're growing very, very quickly. And keep in mind, this is not just a flash in the pan movement. We're going to become an institution to give them the power and the confidence to stand up and let their voice be heard.
I started this organization when I was 18 years old. I decided not to go to college. I didn't get in my dream school, which was the United States Military Academy at West Point. I have this idea to galvanize and motivate the future youth of this country around a core set of ideas, not just political parties or politicians. And the ideas are really: America's the greatest country in the history of the world, the Constitution is the greatest political document ever written, and free enterprise is the most assured way to lift people out of poverty and create prosperity for all. Those are the three big ideas. And I think that's something that can win. We as Christians are called to go into the public arena to correct error with truth. So I go to college campuses and there's a lot of error. We're all sinners. We all live in error. I'm far more interested in what God wants of me than what I want from God.
I have to say this without getting emotional, but I'm very proud of my husband. And I know many of you are too. You have worked so hard. And I know a lot of you have seen, obviously, his videos on TikTok and all the stuff he does on campus, but no one gets to see him from my angle except for myself and our children. And the sacrifices that he made this year, he's amazing. I'm very blessed.
And I would not have been able to do any of it without Erica. And that's the real truth. I'll tell you what. You are here as a grassroots response to the top-down revolution happening in this country. I want our Turning Point USA students to receive a round of applause. These are the freedom fighters of America.
The media said that Turning Point could never run a ground game. They weren't experienced. They didn't know Charlie, right?
This is the greatest generational realignment since Woodstock. This generation is the most conservative generation that we have seen in well over 50 years, and the numbers show it. What young people especially are screaming at is they say, give me a structure that I can live my life by. And especially with young men, more challenging of them, more saying, you know what, honestly, I'm not gonna talk down to you.
Stop being a boy and become a man. You want to learn what that means? Come to church and I'll tell you what it means to become a man. Because we have the greatest story ever told. What can I do to save the country? You answer that question every single day, because you are doing the work to save this beautiful republic. You are doing something that is bigger than you.
If everything completely goes away, how do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. That would be the most important thing. Most important thing is my faith in my life.
There is just so much there. That video is jam-packed with what Charlie Kirk represented to me, the millennial generation, the Gen Z generation. All generations were touched by Charlie. I was speaking to a church member just moments ago. I met him at a coffee shop. I saw him at a coffee shop, and we were just talking about Charlie Kirk, and it just naturally, organically came up. Conversation about Charlie and how much of an impression that Charlie made on him. And the gentleman was 52 years old, and I'm 37, about to be 38, and just how God just answered prayer. Me personally, I believe that it was Billy Graham's prayer to save America, because if you see where Billy Graham died, and when Charlie Kirk started getting famous, there's a little bit of a correlation there. Maybe that's just too much of getting into the weeds, but I definitely believe Charlie Kirk was an answer to the prayers of the remnant. I'll just say that Charlie Kirk was an answer to prayer to get Christians engaged in reaching the generations in college and reaching people in politics, reaching people in the media. What an amazing life he lived. My reaction to that video is it needs to be shown a lot over social media. And Charlie Kirk is going to be a big name. He's going to be somebody that we start quoting. There's going to be history books about him. There's going to be biographies about him. There's going to be divisions about him, because the controversy that the left has brought around him. There's going to be a lot of unity around him with Christian conservatives that want to love our country, that want to love each other, and that want to stick together. That video is always a good reminder of what Charlie Kirk stood for. Family, church, country, really faith, freedom, and family, to be more specific, as he would say. He was a master at media. He was a master at dialogue, conversation, engaging with young people. He was a mastermind of building people up. He was a mastermind of building a movement, bringing people together. I mean, just the way that he was on the Tucker Carlson show, amongst the controversy of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, and the fallout with Daily Wire, and the right after Tucker Carlson had his biblical conversation with Ted Cruz. There you go. You see Charlie Kirk talking about it. You see Charlie Kirk talking about Israel as we're dealing with Iran. He never shied away from those tough conversations, and he set an example for the church to get involved in politics, make this country better for your family. Have a family, have more kids than you can afford, and stay out of financial hardship if you can. Go to college, and if you go to college if you, for the right reasons. Don't go to college for the wrong reasons. But he said it so well. But he was not afraid to engage the young people. He was not afraid to engage the college university professors, and it was amazing. I mean, he's going to be sorely missed, but just like other organizations, I mean, I think of I don't want to get specific, but Turning Point has an opportunity here to continue the work of Charlie Kirk to galvanize this American Republic with a message that promotes faith, freedom, and family. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen. I definitely am excited. And you know what? One word that summarizes Charlie is courage. He said he wanted to be known for courage for his faith, and that's what I'm. Anytime that I get to talk about Charlie Kirk, I'm going to always bring up that word. There's a Hillsdale video that has in bold capital letters says courage, and it just reminds me of the verse in First Chronicles 19 and 13, verse 13. It says, "Be of good courage and let us behave ourselves valiantly for our God and for the cities of our God, and let the Lord do that which is good in His sight." Of course, it's quoting Joab right there, but that's God, and that's a good verse to think about whenever we're talking about being valiant for God, being courageous for God. So that's what that video reminds me of, and it reminds me of the times where I leaned on Charlie Kirk before, during, and after me being a student at the University of South Carolina and being in college myself.
Well, I agree with you on everything you've just said. And I noticed that you mentioned college. Of course, he spoke on college campuses. And part of his story that's so interesting to me is that he chose not to attend college. And I think in that clip we just heard that he had a scholarship to West Point, which is a huge, huge thing. Now, did I get that correct? I mean, do you
He
know that
actually
about
got
him?
so um I believe that he did not get accepted into West Point, and that catapulted him to start Turning Point USA. But you're
Okay.
right. You're right. He did want to go to college at first, but then uh, didn't get in. So you're right in the fact that he wanted to go. Yes.
Yeah, okay. But chose not to in the long run, and I think that's an interesting point for young people to understand too. And I know many people that have specific careers that require, post-secondary education need to go to college, but our culture has really pushed college on children. I was guilty of it with my children. Because I didn't go to college and I thought I was looked down upon because I didn't have a college degree. So when my children were growing up, and they're your age, by the way, Adam, um, I just made them believe that that was the next step. After you graduate from high school, you go right into college. And it was good for my oldest son, and my youngest son works for the family business building swimming pools, and he has an English degree, but it doesn't do him much good building swimming pools. So not every child, I think, needs to go to college. But I didn't mean to get off topic. Let's focus back in on Charlie. And so the memorial service, were you able to watch any of that? And what do you think of its magnitude? I heard that it was as well attended as Martin Luther King's memorial service, and the impact on the Americans who watched it. Share your thoughts on that.
I want to go back on the point that you naturally flowed into a conversation about the video. You're absolutely right. Not everybody needs to go to college. Not everybody is going to want to fit that mold. Not everybody has to. And Charlie Kirk did an amazing job. And there are so many people who have not gone to college and yet were intellectual, that were builders just like Charlie, that were coalition builders. And you don't need a college degree in order to debate professors, even at Oxford University across the pond. And Charlie Kirk did an amazing job of that. And we hear from people who knew Charlie that his humility superseded and eclipsed his intelligence. We look at Charlie Kirk and his ability to have these conversations that were just free of tension, free of being awkward in colleges. Didn't matter where he went. He had a gentle challenge and I would say a persuasive engagement that he maneuvered around these conversations with his humility. Uh, and his courage. He was such a good combination of humility and courage. And we know from the Bible that you get honor after you are humble for a certain season. There's a season to sow, and then there's a season to reap. And sometimes we as sowers, or we as people who are humble, sometimes there's this moment where we're not so humble, and that's where Charlie really, he pierces the motivational scale, the motivational factors of everybody with his life, because he cared about the virtues. He cared about Aristotle. He cared about Socrates. He cared about the classics. He promoted uh, classical education. He promoted homeschool. He was a big proponent of homeschool. He was a driver of the homeschool movement. He said, if you can, homeschool your children, so that way the indoctrination issue is not an issue, so that you won't need a tissue for your indoctrination issue. He didn't say it quite like that. He said it better. But yeah, not college isn't for everybody. He drove that home very well. And he was even thinking about going to Baylor for a little bit. He went to Baylor and said, "Hey, I'd like to come here," but then they told him how much money he'd have to borrow, and he's like, "Okay, never mind. I'm not doing that. No way." And yeah, he still energized and galvanized the conservative Christian movement with his humility and with his courage and with his intelligence, and that sets the high bar for us to meet. But I believe that his death, his very sad death, very very sad. When I saw the video, I was actually um, I was actually asleep, because at the time I was working a lot of jobs. I'm still working a lot of jobs. Because I'm a teacher, that teacher salary is interesting. And but I woke up, and next thing you know, I'm looking at my phone. I wake up and I see these messages that Charlie's been shot, and there was a moment there that we thought that he would survive. And I'm watching Megyn Kelly talk to Glenn Beck on her show, and they're saying that he has a chance. And then next thing you know, Trump is tweeting out that, or putting out on X that he's dead. And it was so sad. It was incredibly sad. I'm still recovering. I'm still recovering. And whenever I think of his death, it's a heavy lift for me. And that takes us into the memorial service. So at his memorial service, everyone felt that same heaviness. We are all feeling some type of heaviness from Charlie Kirk's death, because we were inspired by his life. We were energized with his gentle wisdom of the gospel, of which it's going to be hard to find someone that is like that has that soft approach, where you can have these pointing, challenging conversations with young people, young intellectuals, in a way that is not awkward. It's not bringing tension. You're not fighting with them. He's not being hostile. He's not being belligerent. He's engaging them in a soft, approachable manner, just like James 3 says. The Bible says the wisdom from above is first pure, peaceable, easy to be entreated, filled with the good first fruits of goodness. And if you want to have an example of somebody that just exemplified in Galatians 5:22, the fruit of the Spirit, we're going to be watching those Charlie Kirk videos for a long time, those Charlie Kirk shorts for a long time. And the memorial service, it was so interesting, because there was just so much there. It was, I think the original one was 9 hours long, over 9 hours, and then I think they had about 4 hours of people speaking, and interchangeably speaking, and you saw people that knew him. You saw one of my favorite, one of my, I have three favorites. I have three favorites. If I can say them, can I say them?
Sure.
My favorite one was, well, the first one I'll say is Frank Turek. He's a Christian apologist. He trained Charlie Kirk in how to have engaging, gentle conversations while approaching the gospel. And he was there when Charlie Kirk got shot. He was the guy that everyone's saying is the conspirator, that he was making hat signals, the sniper signals with his hat. That was that was something else. I mean, the memorial service was good because it kind of got the conspiracy theories to stop for just a little bit. They're still ongoing, and there will be more, I'm sure, as the weeks continue and the years continue. But Frank Turek talked about how Charlie Kirk's Charlie Kirk asked him to be his mentor, and how he trained Charlie Kirk with Christian apologetics and the tactics he approached. I remember Charlie Kirk even saying in a engaging conversation that he was trained to investigate assumptions in people's questions. And so that made me think of the materials that I've experienced, or that I encountered when I was in University of South Carolina, and the things that I got into, because everything that Charlie Kirk was saying in his speeches, I was like, wow, I'm already looking into that. Like, it was 2019 and I was taking online Hillsdale courses. I don't know if Charlie Kirk had already been promoting them, but I saw a YouTube ad for Larry Arnn's Aristotle course on YouTube, and that made me hungry for so much more. And I went to Hillsdale.com, and I told you before in the last podcast that I was all for Hillsdale, the Hillsdale College online courses, and Charlie Kirk was too. So when he was advocating for those, I was like, wow, he's for Hillsdale too. And then I would be reading Thomas Sowell books because I'm interested in the critical race theory and the social justice movement and the fallacies and logic and statistics and economics and politics and law. And wow, Charlie Kirk is actually quoting Thomas Sowell. And it's just like, wow. So Charlie Kirk was incrementally just giving like statements that I would say he was confirming everything that I was doing. Everything that I was doing, he seemed to be confirming. Well, anyway, the second speech I thought was just magnificent was Erica Kirk when she forgave the shooter. That was huge. And I think she spoke around 30 minutes, and she spoke about family. She spoke about faith. She spoke about so many things, but the thing that she spoke on that was going to be remembered for the centuries is forgiveness. Not just family, not just faith, not just freedom, but forgiveness. She was really exemplifying what it meant to be a Christian. We've heard the adage, to be Christ-like is to be forgiving. To forgive is to have the most I guess you're setting the example to be more like Christ than anything else that you do when you forgive others. And for forgiving somebody for taking away her soulmate was just incredible, because you see the love that they had for each other. She was melting when they were announcing their engagement. I remember in 2020, in December 2020, I went through my emails and I emailed my wife the YouTube video where Charlie Kirk was getting engaged, because I followed Charlie Kirk before I even went back to University of South Carolina in 2019. I was so excited that he had his podcast, and I was like, man, he has his podcast, because you see like the blue background and him looking all handsome with the side profile and doing great things and making moves. And I was so excited that he got married, and you just see Erica just melt whenever they're doing podcasts together, and whenever they're talking together, she was in another world. She was definitely on cloud nine. You see that love, you see that affection, you see that warmth that Charlie Kirk wanted everybody to experience in their marriage, that he wanted the young generation to experience in their marriage. And for Erica Kirk to lose that in such a brutal, savage, barbaric way, in such a close time period, not even 2 weeks before his death was not even 2 weeks after his death, you see her just forgive the shooter. That man, that young man that she said, she didn't name him, but she said that young man, and everyone knew who she was talking about. And there are conspiracy theories that we don't know who the shooter is, or there's another one, or I'm sure there's accomplices, but we don't know that. As a historian, we want to wait before we want to just look at the facts and and we want to gather the evidence before determining anything. We don't want to go with the conspiracy theories. We want to look at the empirical evidence first as a historian. That's what we want to do, and want to ask those empirical questions. But the love that Erica had for Charlie was shining in that speech. And then the last one was Trump. I mean, just he had a tinge of humor whenever he was saying, "I can't forgive. I can't love my enemies. It's just not me." That was Trump. As Ben Shapiro said, that was Trump being Trump, lightening the mood, and inviting a conversation with Erica to change his mind on that, to prove him wrong on that. So that was good, and I'm glad that Trump got up there and showed strength, showed a vision for America, and the memorial service was really interesting to see, because you looking on Facebook, looking on X, and looking on social media of all the people that were there, it brought people together. Even in Charlie Kirk's death, he brings people together. He unifies people that in 2015 and 2010 were busy talking about atheism and socialism. And the past 5 years, Charlie Kirk has been really hammering in on transgenderism and critical race theory and the border and student debt and marriage and family and God and going back to church and living up those principles. And you just see the respect that all those people had. I mean, Elon Musk was there. Wow, the richest man in the world, the most powerful man in the world, got back together and were smiling at each other in the booth. And you see Elon Musk putting out on X for Charlie, and you see Jack Probazak going out and in his speech saying, "Put on the armor of God," and he said it with such passion and fervor that was electrifying. I can't imagine being there. I wish I was there. It would have been nice to shake the hands of people, but the most powerful, influential Christian conservatives, even if you weren't Christian, you were there. And he brought a lot of people there. He brought the people together in his death, and that you just know that God's hand was on him. And I believe that's why we sense this heaviness. All of us sense it. A lot of us sense it. I won't say all of us, because there's definitely glee and jubilation on the left side of the political aisle. But want to stick on the memorial for just a few more moments. You just see the impact that he had, and the fact that the reason why I say he was more than likely an answer to Billy Graham's prayer to restore America. I watched Billy Graham's prayer. I watched Billy Graham's last message in 2013. I was working at a hotel in Shelby, North Carolina, while I was at Bible college, and I remember Billy Graham praying for America to come back to the cross, come back to Jesus, and praying for the restoration and a revival of America. And Charlie Kirk believed in revival. He believed that people could revive this country again if they put their faith in God, if they put their faith in Jesus. And, Vice President Vance even said, "I can speak for the past 2 weeks. I've spoken more on Jesus Christ in my political arena, on the public arena, than I ever have in my entire life." And just how one young man's death, your young innocent man, brave, courageous, and humble, how his martyrdom and assassination brought people together, and the whole world felt it. People in Asia, people in Europe, as well as America, were coming together and getting involved in vigils. It is an incredible moment, and you know that it's almost like we lost a prophet. It's almost like we lost one of the judges. It's almost like we lost our very own. I just want to say this. Imagine Billy Graham being assassinated at a young age. Billy Graham wasn't, and I'm talking about Billy Graham because Patrick Bet David said that Charlie Kirk had the potential to be the combination of Rush Limbaugh and Billy Graham. He said that's out there, and it was true. I can't say enough of good things about the memorial, but it was good. It was what we needed. And over 100 million people were streaming it. I was streaming it. My wife was streaming it on her device. We were in separate parts of our house, and we were streaming it on our cell phone, and it was watched all over the world. And I know that I just pray that Turning Point, Christians, conservatives band together, they unify, and they do great things in the midterms in 2026.
Amen. Amen. That was so well summarized. I appreciate your perspective on that. So we need to take a short break, Adam, but when we come back, I'd like to ask you to share your thoughts on the current state of American youth and how ordinary people can make a difference. And also talk a little bit about the government school system and how this young man who committed this heinous crime may have been influenced by what he had learned in government schools. So we'll talk about that right after we get back from the break. I'll be back with my interview with Adam Mahdavi right after this. Government school enrollment is declining in America. Parents are increasingly taking kids out of failing schools and seeking alternatives like private and homeschooling. Despite this drop in enrollment, school spending and hiring continue to grow, according to a new report by the Manhattan Institute. Increasing the budgets for this failed system not only hurts taxpayers, but it's a real slap in the face to parents who choose to fund their own children's education. This disparity doesn't have to continue. State legislators can align funding strictly based on a per-pupil basis, following benchmarks such as average tuition rates for local private schools. This approach would reduce spending based on enrollment and lead to lower taxes. Tune in next week for more insights from U.S. parents involved in education, and connect with us at USPI on X and Facebook. To join the movement, visit uspi.org. Welcome back to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. With me today is Adam Mahdavi, a teacher at the South Carolina Preparatory Academy. So, Adam, what is your assessment of today's young people in America?
I taught American history and the Constitution last year in a high school, in a charter school, in a brick and mortar setting. I'm not there anymore because of my activism, speaking out against anti-American history. But um, I have a lot of love for Gen Z. I have so much love for Gen Z. I have so much love for college students. I have so much love for millennials. You know, even for my enemies. Um, they're hurt right now. They're hurt, and they're gonna need a shepherd, under shepherd. Jesus is the great shepherd, and we should all look to the great shepherd to shepherd our souls. And Psalm 23 is just an incredible verse for that, where God takes us to still waters and green pastures. We don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be fearful. New Testament writer, Paul, when he was writing his letter to Timothy, says that I've not given you the spirit of um, fear, but of love and of power and of a sound mind. And it's incredible that Charlie Kirk had this amazing influence and this penetrating reach into Gen Z. They knew he loved them, and I share that same love, maybe not with the same talent that Charlie Kirk had, but I love my students. I still love them. I got some students that uh, I just think about them and I just smile. And I know Charlie Kirk was just the same way. And whenever he thought of particular students in his Turning Point organization, he just had a heart for them. And I just love that generation. They seem to be open because this was the generation. I think they were in elementary or middle school. They were in middle school. The high schoolers right now. That's what I'm talking about. So the people that are in high school right now, they were in middle school during COVID, and the people who are in college now, well, those are the students that had their proms canceled. They had their football games canceled. They had their sports canceled. They had so many things taken from them because of the COVID policies. I don't like saying that it was because of COVID. Um, I don't want to fall into the reification fallacy of giving personhood to a disease when people administered that disease and infected us with that disease, China, and then you had policies that just shut down America, and it was I think months of rioting that was going on during that time because of the George Floyd riots, the 1619 riots, as I call them. As Mary Graybar also says, I'm not the only one that says that, but Charlie Kirk pinpointed that, and he would lean into that when he was in colleges, especially when he was talking to people that were coming at him in a hostile manner. Like there's a video out there of him talking to a professor, and the professor was trying to be cordial, but Charlie Kirk leaned into that. Hey, you need to remember, this is the generation that had their proms taken away, had their sports taken away, and y'all shut down the country because of your policies, and they were unscientific. Masks didn't work, like they said they were. They shoved a needle in everybody. They threatened people with their livelihoods if they didn't get this experiment vaccination, and all the booster shots that went along with it. If there was even social distancing, and there was stickers on the floor in the grocery stores telling you what direction to go into. There was warnings of being not let in if you didn't have a mask, and the people on the left got mad at you if you didn't social distance 6 feet, and then it went to 3 feet. It's like make up your minds what you're doing. And Charlie Kirk leaned into that, and that's the current generation that's in college right now. Those are the people that's there. The people that are in high school right now, they need direction. They need millennials to put their arms around them. They need the older generation. They need your generation, Miss Sherry, to put their arms around them, but also answer hard questions. Give them guidance. We need to do that. We need to show that America is the most productive country, the most accepting country, is the most generous country, is the most exceptional country. We need to tell them, show them, and we need to sing it. We need to have dances. We need to have teachings and strong doctrine that show the American exceptionalism that is our story. The good, the bad, the ugly, and the bloody. We need to be committed to those things and show how America is exceptional, how meritocracy flourishes a society when I'm going to say this one word, and it might make some people mad, but it was Charlie Kirk's favorite word, according to Erica, and that word is earn. Earn. Can you earn it now? Yes, you can. And that was Charlie Kirk's vision. That was Charlie Kirk's mission. That you can earn this. You can earn a great life. But right now, Charlie Kirk recognized that. Right now we need to reflect on the fact that Charlie Kirk recognized that the young people, the generation, the Gen Z, and even millennials like myself, we can't afford our homes. Well, not all of us. Some of us. We can't afford homes. We can't afford savings. We can't invest. We can't live off a single income. I'm a father of 3 and a husband, and I'm working multiple jobs. I'm teaching at a homeschool resource center, and I'm teaching at South Carolina Preparatory Academy. Thank God. And it's a struggle, and I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to try my best, and I'm going to earn what's given to me. I'm going to earn what I get. I'm not going to earn what's given to me, but Charlie, to speak on that, Charlie had no problem going around and asking for asking donors to get involved. So there's that. And so Gen Z is in a predicament right now. We are at a crossroads right now. We are in a crossroads. It's 2025. We got midterms in a year, a little over a year, and it's important that we lean into this moment and that we promote faith, family, freedom, and forgiveness, just like Charlie Kirk would have wanted us to. But Gen Z is staring down a dark financial future for the country, and we need hope. We need courage. We need to stand on the doctrines that Jesus gave us, and that's what Charlie would have wanted. That's what Billy Graham would have wanted. And there are many people in Gen Z that never met Charlie Kirk. I myself, I never met Charlie Kirk. I never met Rush Limbaugh. I never met Greg Bonson. I never met Rush Limbaugh. I never met Nabil Qureshi. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you're familiar with Nabil Qureshi, but he was a strong Christian apologist that was formerly a Muslim. He wrote the book Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. Never met him. Never met Billy Graham, but we can learn from these people. We can watch their videos and learn. I think that leads into your next question. But yeah, that's what I think of Gen Z. But the last thing I'll say is, not only is America the most productive, accepting, generous, and exceptional nation ever, we're also the strongest. And our strength is determined by how we respond to this moment.
Amen. So yeah, so the other question I alluded to before the break is something that I gave a public statement about Charlie's death, and our organization, United States Parents Involved in Education, is convinced that government schools are indoctrinating children to hate themselves, to hate one another, and to be social justice warriors at all costs. And so we've been well aware of this for some time, and you, of course, as well. We know that it's the indoctrination has been happening in colleges and universities for decades, and it has since trickled down into K-12. We're aware that children are taught curriculum as young as kindergarten, that they may not be a boy or a girl, that they can be whatever they want to be as far as their sex. The indoctrination is blatant in government schools, to the point now where our organization does not recommend any parent enroll their child in government schools. And so, along those lines, I just wondered what your opinion was regarding the 22-year-old who's been accused of this heinous crime. And, do you think it's very likely that his indoctrination through the government school system and the culture is just rampant with deceit and lies? Do you think this had an impact on his decision to assassinate Charlie Kirk?
You got to go off the facts. You got to go off what we know. We know that there were bullets with the engravings that were of somebody who was on the left. We know by Kash Patel and the governor of Utah stating what was engraved on those bullets. The fact that the left is calling him a MAGA Republican, I think that's what got Jimmy Kimmel in trouble, rightfully so. And by the way, it's not, if you lose your job for celebrating a assassination and a murder, you have lost your privilege of being federally and federally supported, or being supported by the state, of having that job, especially if you're using that job as a platform to air out your jubilation of a person's murder. It's not a loss. It's not an infringement of the Constitution, by the way. The First Amendment is about freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and freedom of petition. And none of those are violated if somebody gets fired for being celebratory of a murder, of an assassination that happened in broad daylight, that took away two people's fathers, two people's sons, a brother, and a soulmate of a wonderful, beautiful, godly woman, and an inspiration to the entire world. You're not losing your First Amendment. You're not losing your constitutional right. You're losing a privilege that you're losing the privilege of that position, because you didn't live up to the moral standard code, that moral code of conduct. And that's why some people are getting canceled, and rightly so. But going back to the question, do I think that the person who pulled the trigger was a 22-year-old. From what we know, it was. And there's some conspiracy theories about the video that was given out there, and just because there is AI, it doesn't mean everything is AI. I don't think the governor of Utah, I don't think Kash Patel, I don't think Pam Bondi, and I don't think Trump, and I don't think the investigators are using AI to hide Israeli authorship or Israeli involvement or an inside job on the conservative movement to get rid of Charlie. I think that's just preposterous. Um, so what if a shadow does not appear on the roof? So what if somebody, if you see a glitch here and there, um, that doesn't indefinitely prove that the videos are AI. It's something to consider, and it does need to be investigated, and it should be investigated. But I don't have any positive evidence to show that everything that we've seen thus far is AI generated. I just don't have the evidence for that. And as a historian, I got to go off of evidence. Um, and the evidence that we see is that this young man was he was an outlier in his family. He had talked about how he did not like Charlie Kirk, how Charlie Kirk spreaded hate. At it was a conversation I think he had with his family, and his family members told the police and investigators about how he did not like Charlie Kirk and how he believed that Charlie Kirk spreaded hate. And I just don't see how you can think that he's MAGA or not conservative enough when somebody says that Charlie Kirk spreads hate. You know, while he was alive, Charlie Kirk was called the racist. He was called someone that spreaded hate. And Charlie Kirk would always be the first person to give that person a microphone, to give them the platform. Like you're right now, you're sharing your platform with me, and you're being generous and you're being kind, and you're questioning and your demeanor, and just all the time, every time I'm on here, you and your people, your team are just so complimentary and kind. And Charlie Kirk made sure that he was running a similar ship, a tight ship that made people feel comfortable, wanted, and gave them a voice. And Charlie Kirk was the first person to give leftists a voice, whether they hated him, whether they were hostile, whether they came to fight. You had a 72, you had like a 70-year-old man coming to challenge Charlie Kirk to a fist fight. And Charlie Kirk gave him a platform, continued to talk with him, even after the guy was like, yeah, the Holy Spirit told me to come here and prove you wrong and challenge you in a fist fight. Yeah. Um, there's no book, chapter, and verse for that one. That was interesting. But yeah, the shooter, and here's what we got to be honest about. We have to be honest about the impact this ideologically driven, activist driven, critical race theory, trans ideology, anti-American history is having on our youth. We have to be honest. Why is Oklahoma the only state that is having the left um, complain about the wonderful social studies standards that they're passing? I know South Dakota is facing some backlash from the left with their Hillsdale having an influence on their state standards. I love the fact that PragerU is teaming up with education superintendents of states to implement their material. And just to be clear, just to be totally transparent, last year when I taught American history and the Constitution, I used PragerU videos. I used Thomas Sowell. I used Hillsdale. We watched Hillsdale videos. We watched the Hillsdale classes on the American story by Dr. Wilford McClay. We used his textbook, Land of Hope. We used the 1776 Project in my class. We used David Barton and some of his material in my class, and we had a great time. But you know what? I tried to bring in leftist talking points in my class so that students can get the other side, but teach the other side with a standard. We don't. I'm against. I am. I'll say it here on your show. I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I do not believe in just only exclusively showing two sides of an issue. I believe that there needs to be a moral standard. There needs to be a standard of virtue that you are aiming to bring your students to live up to while you are reviewing a certain narrative and story and teaching a problem solving skill while you're teaching history. I just believe that is the way that we should do it. We should not just show a Venn diagram where on the one side you have the Project 1619 or Howard Zinn version of history, and then a very weak, almost pandering view of what a proponent of the right would say about Christopher Columbus or Thomas Jefferson or Vanderbilt or Rockefeller or any one of those people. I certainly believe that when you teach history, you not only show both sides, but you show a element of virtue. Maybe for example, an Aristotelian virtue of courage or of magnanimity or magnificence, some virtue that you're aspiring your students to live up to when you're talking about slavery, when you're talking about Reconstruction, when you're talking about Jefferson and Washington, and including people like James Armistead or Crispus Attucks or Booker T. Washington, black patriots that don't get mentioned as much as Malcolm X or W.E.B. Du Bois or Martin Luther King. And I tell you what, going back to one of your other questions, Charlie Kirk's memorial was greater than that of a JFK or an MLK. And I think that is absolutely amazing that the left, who says white Christian heterosexual men are the problem in this country, had a white Christian heterosexual male elevated to such grandeur, magnificence, because he lived a life of excellence. He lived a life of humility and courage. He lived a life that pointed to Christ. He lived a life that brought people together. And the young man that pulled the trigger was indoctrinated with the same type of indoctrination of that of a Howard Zinn history, an anti-American history, a Project 1619 version of history. How do we know that? Am I saying this with just arrogance, and am I just making a right wing talking point, and am I just using fillers? No, we know this to be the case. We have seen this ever since COVID. We've known that it was critical race theory the entire time for the past 30 years. For the past 30 years, critical race theory and multiculturalism has been a poison in our education centers, in our teacher preparation programs. It is not, we are not making these claims about the left through speculation or conjecture or guesswork. It is blatantly shown. And you know what? On the same day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I don't know if you know this or not, but the NAACP and the Ibram Kendi lawsuit that they brought against Ellen Weaver was thrown out of court for having no standing in violation of the Constitution, First Right Amendment. Absolutely thrown out of court. The very same reaction in the court of throwing out this lawsuit was the same reaction the left thought that would happen to the lawsuit that I spearheaded against them. When I made that recording of that woman coming into this state, South Carolina, and indoctrinating our students with critical race theory through ELA, with pretending to teach our students ELA skills, English language arts skills, while maneuvering critical race theory, embedding critical race theory ideas, embedding microaggressions, embedding lived experience and voice, and all the counter narratives and counter storytelling that could make a young person believe that America is systematically racist, that America has always been oppressive against women, oppressive against minorities. The same doctrinal talking points that this woman perpetuated was the same set of talking points that I helped expose in the lawsuits of Lexington and Charleston school districts. That case was not thrown out of court. That case ended up with a settlement And the settlement was that Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, EL Education, had to hit the highway out of South Carolina. But the contrast is the opposite thing happened when the NAACP and Ibram Kendi sued Ellen Weaver, our state superintendent of education, and that was great. That happened on the same day Charlie Kirk was assassinated, but a lot of things weren't really covered in the news because of such a high-profile Christian conservative was killed. But we got to stop pretending. We have got to stop pretending that there's a neutral area, that the schools are neutral and they're objective, and that things are too complicated, and moral relativism is the standard of virtue that we all have to lean into and that we all have to pander to. We need to stop that. It is corroding, it is dissolving American education. And as a result, the church, Christians, conservatives need to save America by trying to get better state standards in history. History is important. That's where our identity as Americans come from, because we engage in the heritage that we inherit through the wonderful story of progress and redemption, calibrating our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness virtues over time. It didn't happen all at once, but you know what? We need to tell the whole story, and the whole story needs to be told while getting students to believe in the virtues, to be exposed to the virtues, so you don't have these lost souls that think they have to put a bullet in Christian conservatives in order to make a difference. We've got to stop this. The left is the party of violence. Notice that we didn't riot. We didn't burn buildings. We burned candles. We didn't burn buildings. We burnt candles. We had prayer vigils. We said prayers. And when the left dug in their heels and tried to pass critical race theory on us with lawsuits, with doubling down on their activism, in their resentment and bitterness, because that's what's driving the critical race theory movement. That's what's driving the multiculturalism. It's a revenge attitude. It is a attitude of resentment and bitterness. But you know what we do? We forgive. We forgive. We pray, and we gather, and we go to church. But we need to bring the church to politics. And Charlie Kirk's death is a megaphone for Christian pastors, for Christians in general, husbands, wives, children, to no longer be silent, but be active, energized, gentle, friendly, but hyperactive with bringing politics into the political arena. There's no such thing as separation of church and state in our Constitution. It is the exact opposite. The First Amendment is the freedom of religion, not freedom from religion. And I am praying, it's my prayer, that we live up to Charlie Kirk's mission and vision for our country, and we promote the teachings of Jesus. We, in Charlie Kirk's own words, we get to know our Bible, we live out the Bible, and we tell others what the Bible says. That's my vision. And we will have, I'm not saying that we'll get rid of all of them. We're not going to get rid of all the haters. We're not going to get rid of all of them. But is that a reason to not do something? You know, in Revelation, we hear of a small remnant of people that are not going to listen to the truth. But that doesn't mean that we not be salt and light. Jesus Christ commanded that we're salt and light in this nation, and it is high time that we live up that great commission. We do not back down. Sorry, I went on too long. Thank you for letting me go on that rant.
No. You are very articulate, Adam, and you've expressed, I think, what so many of us who are Christian conservatives and have been called to be salt and light. Many of us have had that calling on our lives, and it's a calling that many need to answer. I just want to make one comment before we go to break, and then I'm going to ask you the two questions I ask all my guests before closing the show. But I thought it was very interesting that you used the word virtue a lot. And the reason I found it interesting was I wrote a few curricula a few years back, an abstinence education curricula, where we used the 1828 dictionary to define words. So the curriculum was based on definitions of terms because we knew that the left had taught children to think of, definitions that were incorrect. So one of the first word that we taught in the curriculum was virtue, because most young people don't even know what virtue means. And so the 1828 dictionary, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's amazing. Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary. Many of the definitions have biblical references to support the definition. But the definition for virtue, and the one that we used in our curriculum, was voluntary obedience to truth. So that's very deep, especially if you think about it from a biblical perspective. And it certainly is what is missing so much in our younger generation and how they're taught. So thanks for highlighting that. Continue to do that. And so let's go ahead and take that short break. And then when we come back, I'll ask you those two final questions. So don't go away. I'll be right back with my interview with Adam Mahdavi right after this. U.S. Parents Involved in Education is a nonprofit nationwide coalition dedicated to restoring education to its rightful local roots. U.S. PI's mission is to empower parents and local communities, enabling them to break free from federal and national influences, thereby reclaiming parental authority over their children's education. We firmly believe that parental rights are inherent God-given rights. Children belong to their families, not the state, and local communities are best equipped to support parents in raising their children. The vision of U.S. PI is to cultivate a culture where parents, entrusted with the authority to choose how their children learn, stand as the undisputed primary educators. In this culture, local schools operate in tandem with families, and education is free from burdensome federal mandates. Join us next week for further insights into U.S. Parents Involved in Education, including our game-changing blueprint to establish state control of education. For more information, visit uspie.org or connect with us at USPI on Facebook and Twitter. Welcome back to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. With me today has been school teacher Adam Mahdavi. Adam, we close our show with two important questions, but I'm going to narrow their focus a bit. What concerns you most about the future of our nation's younger generations, and what gives you hope?
I think those are important questions. And as a husband and a father, as a Christian, and as a believer in our constitutional republic, what concerns me the most is, how are we going to use this moment? How are Christians going to use this moment? It's not going to be conservatives that save America. It's not going to be the intellectuals that save America. It's not going to be just those people in the grassroots that save America. It's going to be Christians. It's going to be the grassroots Christians. It's going to be the noble Christians. It's going to be the policymakers who are Christian. It's going to be the Christians that are the salt and light and that can save this country. And that's why Charlie Kirk was so adamant on faith, family, and freedom, most of all as for his faith. He said that he wanted to be remembered for the courage of his faith. And the Bible calls us to have courage for our faith. Again, we are not given the spirit of fear, but we are given the spirit of love, power, and of a sound mind. And what concerns me is, if Christians do not get involved in politics, if we do not get involved with changing the state standards in our history curriculums, if we do not get involved with understanding the good, the true, and the beautiful, if we're not caught up in Christ's splendidness, Christ's superiority, Christ's splendid magnificence, and if we don't get involved in reading our Bibles, if we don't get involved in prayer and fasting, if we don't get involved in politics, if we don't bring our faith, our biblical faith, to the public and political realm, then my greatest fear is that we will have wasted this opportunity and you can guarantee that the left will not let go or not let any opportunity go to waste. I don't want to borrow the playbook from the communists, because building a movement on top of a martyrdom and using a martyrdom to further advance your political movement is not what I think is what we need to do. What we need to do is catapult Charlie Kirk in the forefront of social media in a way that lifts up Christ. We need, and I'm not saying we need to idolize the man. We need to be very careful not to make him an idol, but we also need to be sure to lift up how he exemplified Christ. What did he want for the Christian church? He wanted structure. He wanted tradition. And, I come from a Christian circle that doesn't have a whole lot of structure and a whole lot of tradition, but we need that structure. Young men in Generation Z, we need structure. We need the virtues of what you said. We need the humility to obey Christ. And so that's my concern, is that we don't capitalize on this moment. Now, can we? We have more tools to build our articulating ability. We have more tools to learn math. We have more tools to learn science. We have more tools to communicate and make things aesthetically pleasing. We have more tools at our disposal than any generation that has come before us. I hope we do use, in a positive way, we positively use AI to capture the essence of what Charlie Kirk did, how he did it, and we teach that method. No one will be able to replace Charlie Kirk, but we can use the things that he taught us and how he did things so that we can equip young people with that particular gift, with that particular leading on and calling on their lives, to equip them with that specific armor, with that specific gift. And we need the entire church to recognize that they do have gifts and that they can make a difference. That if you can read, that if you can write, you can grow, because you're human. You are a human being. And because you're human, you can learn about the great things that Charlie Kirk stood for. In particular, you can learn more about Christ, because you were made in the image of God for a relationship with God, for Christ. And you're made in a way that you can learn, you can advance. And the thing that Charlie Kirk stood for is that he wants people to not just say, oh, well, you know what, the end times are coming. People will wax worse and worse. And, the rapture's coming, or the end times is coming. Armageddon is coming. We don't need a civil war, but we don't need to bring Armageddon here. Those things will happen. We don't know when they will happen, but we need to be salt and light. We need to learn the truth. We need to learn how to use evidence in a very gentle way that invites people to a conversation, to where we get people that are on the fence, that are honest, that are curious. Yes, there will be people that deny Christ. So what? Jesus had Judas in his team. Did that stop Jesus from having a group within a group, Peter, James, and John? Did that stop Jesus? Did that stop Paul? Did that stop Peter? Did that stop James? Did that stop Matthew? Did that stop the martyrs of the Christ's disciples? Did that stop them? No, it motivated them. We need to be motivated to learn as much as we can, to use the tools that God has given us. To whom much is given, much is required. And if you cannot be trusted with the least of these things, if you cannot be just with the least things, then you will not be given much to be just, and to be proven even more so that you're unjust with much. If you can't be faithful in the little things, you can't be trusted in being faithful with the big things. And that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that we grow. I'm hoping that we get strong, that we further strengthen our unity, and that God would just use that to his glory. I think that verse, that 1 Chronicles 19:13, is so powerful. Let us be courageous. Let us be valiant for our God and for the cities of our God, and let God do what is right in his sight.
Amen. Amen. What a great way to close this episode. I think you did a little preaching there, Adam. That's awesome. And that's exactly what we need to hear. Your message is right on point, and I agree with you 100%. So thanks again for joining me, Adam. As I said the last time you're on, I think you're an excellent guest, and I'd love to have you on again in the future, maybe just sort of a regular every couple of months or so. So be thinking about that, and I know there'll be plenty for us to discuss, as there's always plenty in the news. So thanks again, Adam. Thank you to everyone who's been listening today. And if you found today's discussion eye-opening, please share this episode with a friend. Give us a 5-star rating and subscribe to stay informed. You can connect with us on Facebook and X at USPI and visit uspie.org to join the movement. Until next time, I'm Sherry Few. Thanks for listening.
U.S. Parents Involved in Education is a nonprofit coalition dedicated to restoring local control of education and parental authority. By empowering parents to reclaim responsibility for their children's learning and encouraging states to move away from federal influence, USPI seeks to create a culture where parents are the primary decision makers in education and schools support families without the burden of federal mandates. If you want to start a state or regional USPI chapter in your area, please visit uspie.org and complete the brief questionnaire in the chapters section.